I used to make up stories about how I became disabled, and one of those stories was that I got stabbed. When I first moved to Los Angeles, I would take the metro everywhere. And the main line that I would take was called the Red Line. Now it's called the B Line, but back then it was called the Red Line. The Red Line was my main line that got me from North Hollywood to wherever I needed to go. One day when I was getting on the train, I go straight to the handicap spot like I normally do. I just sit down in one of they're like, the side chairs where you can put your walker or wheelchair or whatever, and you have a little bit of extra space. And I sat down there, and next to me was a young couple. And they were probably about my age, and I was in my early 20s at the time. I could tell they were curious about my walker. And you could kind of see them whispering. Anyways, after a couple minutes, they're like, "Hey, what happened to you?" I paused for a second and I was like, "Oh, I got into a fight." And they're like, "No way." Because we were just talking about that. And I was like, maybe this guy got in a fight and that's why he has a walker. And I was like, all right, let me lean into this. They were like, "Well, what happened? What happened in the fight?" I was like, "Oh, I ended up getting in a fight with this guy and then he stabbed me in the back. He pulled out a knife and he stabbed me in the back. And that's why I can't walk. That's why I have a walker." And they were like, "What?" And I was like, "Yeah, see?" And so I turned around and I showed them a scar on my back. I have a scar on my lower back that's like 7 inches long, and it's straight down the middle of my back. And they were like, "No way." They were just like blown away because the scar was proof that I had gotten stabbed in the back, and that's why I can't walk. Now, here's the thing. I used to make up stories about how I became disabled all of the time. And telling people that I got stabbed was just one of the stories that I would tell. My thinking was basically that, you know what? It's your disability. You don't owe anybody an explanation. You don't need to tell people that the reason why you have a disability is because you have cerebral palsy and you were born that way. It's your right to not tell people if you don't want to tell people. You don't owe strangers an explanation for your disability. But as time went on and I got more experience with life, I started to think to myself, why is it that you're creating these elaborate stories? Why are you telling people these crazy stories about why you have a disability when you can just say you have cerebral palsy and you were born that way? Sometimes the stories that we tell other people are really the stories that we're telling ourselves to avoid something that we don't want to see or aren't ready to accept. It wasn't that I was trying to hide my disability from other people. It was that I was actually hiding from myself.